Here's in the room.
We have what?
Have anything but that in the room. Oh, okay. Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for Monday, December 18th, 2023. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Byers?
Here.
Ms. Smith? Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible. We have no public commenters tonight, so we go to the omnibus agenda items that will be taken with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion.
I would like to be excused from any bills I incurred.
Ms. Ryan?
Item D is in Delta.
Motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Mayor.
Oh.
I'd like to be excused from voting on any bills I incurred in my role as councilman.
Thank you.
Move approval.
Second.
Yeah, I think we had 3 approvals and 1 second. Items considered on the omnibus tonight are approval of the minutes of the special public hearing of December 4th, 2023, and approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting of December 4th, 2023. A report to receive and file town of Normal expenditures for payment as of December 13th, 2023. A resolution to award the bid of the Lincoln Street Water Main Improvement Project to George Gildner Incorporated at a cost of $868,692. A resolution to accept the federal compliance audit for the year ended March 31st, 2023. An ordinance amending Chapter 11 of the Building Code, Section 11.4-1I, and adopting the 2023 National Electric Code with amendments. A resolution authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with McLean County for centralized booking services. An ordinance amending the Personnel Code to provide paid leave to certain part-time and temporary employees. A resolution conditionally reapproving the final plat of the Apostolic Christian Church Second Edition, and a resolution to accept bids and awards a contract to J. Spencer Construction of Normal, Illinois for the Uptown Station Security and Stair Tower Improvement Project and approve an associated budget. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. Those items are approved. Item D is a resolution approving continuing service agreements and hourly rates and costs for innovation and technology service. Ms. Ryan.
So moved, please.
Second.
Ms. Bryant.
All right, thank you. I pulled this item because it seemed a bit new in a pivot a little bit in normal services for INT services. An interesting one, but wanted to kind of make sure that we gave it proper analysis. So I was just, I had a few questions. Will these services begin this year or next? And what do we expect budget impact to be either this year or next, whenever they come to be, um, with bringing in these vendors as needed?
Well, in terms of specific dollar impact, I'm not sure I can provide that information right now. What we're asking council to do is approve basically a pool of vendors for the Innovation and Technology Department to use dependent on the project, if that makes sense. So this would be, council might most relate this to the situation for engineering services. We have continuing services agreement with a variety of engineering firms, professional engineers, and that allows the water department and public works, even Parks and Rec, to utilize the engineering services from the pool of engineers in our continuing services group to select the appropriate engineering firm for the project at hand based on their subject matter expert or even frankly their availability. In this particular situation, we're asking council to approve a similar kind of pool where of pre-qualified vendors that are subject matter experts that we can utilize dependent on the technology project at hand. So what this does is it saves the INT staff in the future from doing an RFP for every specific technology project, finding a vendor and then moving forward that way. So this is more of a time saver of staff time as well as then securing the rates. So we knew in advance what the hourly rates will be for these particular vendors. So I can't really say how much it will save overall in the general fund budget because it is project specific, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. Just a couple more follow-ups if I can. There was one vendor, Marketplace? Place, yeah, that didn't give an hourly rate, but rather a monthly subscription. That seemed a little bit odd compared to the others. Do we know why that was not an hourly rate? I can't speak directly to that. Ms. Gadaraju maybe can. We want to bring her forward. Ms. Gadaraju, would you like to come forward? She is definitely our subject matter expert in this area.
Thank you. So Marketplace is slightly different and they do not operate on hourly rates. They do operate on annual costs. And what they provide is we have a number of different technologies coming up, and the pace at which the technologies are coming are hard to evaluate. So Marketplace specifically evaluates all the up and emerging type of technologies. So they would be providing resources on that front. And it is an annual cost.
So will we be engaging with them on an annual subscription? More
So
than likely.
as we are bringing in all of these, as we have new and emerging technologies we are evaluating, yes, it would be an annual one.
Okay. Then the last thing I have, and maybe Ms. Gadaraju is best to answer this one, but there was a description here in our report that said certain critical projects are encountering significant, at times unacceptable delays. The existing procurement processes and subsequent compliance requirements, such as the criminal justice information system, impose substantial burden on the limited resources. I was wondering, is that criminal justice information system part of the new Aegis system? Is that our portion of that, or is that something different?
No, this is more on the compliance side. Aegis is more a tool in technology. CGIS is more compliance that anybody who's touching our network and in a sense touching police departments' data is required to go through the compliance process. So what happens is when we qualify a vendor, the process is we bring them on board and then we put them as an organization and any staff who will be working on our projects through the CGIS policy and background checks. It typically takes anywhere between 6 to 12 weeks. It's a long process. So we want to pre-qualify vendors, have all of those checks done ahead of time, so we have a pool of people to work with.
Okay, fair enough. thank you for those
Yep.
answers.
Thank you.
Further on this item? Please call the roll.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye, that item is approved. We have one item of general orders tonight, which is a resolution authorizing the execution of a joint funding agreement for construction work with the Illinois Department of Transportation and motor fuel tax resolution for West College Avenue from Rivian Motorway to Norfolk Southern Railroad.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on this item. I think we talked about this a lot, building up to this point. This is just the actual moving forward with redoing College Avenue in 21st century terms. Motion, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That item is approved. For new business, we have a motion to accept the proposed fiscal year 2023-24 to fiscal year 28-29 Community Investment Plan,
Move
also
approval.
known as the CIP. We have a motion, second.
Second.
Thank you. Pam, I'll turn it
All
over
right,
to you.
thank you, Mayor and Council. Obviously, we're inviting Mr. Hune to come forward. Like in past years, Mr. Hune is going to give a high-level overview of the Community Investment Plan. This plan highlights and identifies our capital expenses and the capital projects that we will be incorporating into the upcoming proposed 23, whoops, I keep saying the wrong year, the upcoming 24-25 fiscal year through 28-29. And so, Mr. Hune, I appreciate you being here. I do want to quickly highlight, before I get caught up in things, appreciation to Mr. Hune and the entire finance team for putting this together. And then, of course, department heads who actually worked to identify the projects and put together the background information and all the detail that you will find on the town's CIP dashboard on our website. So with that, I think we've got a very good story to tell. Lots of projects on the horizon, and Mr. Hune will take it away. Thanks.
Thank you. As Ms. Reese mentioned, yeah, we are in budget season now. As the council knows, we'll talk to you in late January about the operating budget by fund and department. We'll go through that quite thoroughly. We always bring the capital side of that equation a little earlier to give you time to absorb it and review it as part of that process. In terms of, why we do it, a community investment plan purpose, essentially, if we are making significant and reoccurring investments in the community, then it translates into a high quality for the resident to a high quality of life resident. If we're not, then that decreases. So a plan helps us basically drive this process, ensure that we're making these investments. And you can see on this slide the diverse amount of investing we're doing. Of course, roads, bridges, traffic, that's a significant piece of this, and we'll get into more detail in a few slides. Vehicle and equipment for all of our operations, public works, waste collection trucks, street maintenance vehicles and front loaders, public safety, of course, police and fire are a significant investment for capital in terms of vehicles and equipment. We're building a new fire station, which you're well aware of. In terms of maintenance for parks and facilities, this is across the board in our parks, our pools and systems. Those are highly needing investments all the time. All our buildings we own and operate have HVAC systems, have roofs, have floors, have building envelopes to maintain, all requiring a great deal of investment to maintain and keep. And of course, water and sewer infrastructure is a huge area of investment for the community that we also control and manage. The goal is to provide a resource for the staff to use, for the council to have, for residents to be able to see in terms of a tool, and then to have an approach that's balanced and prioritizes these needs, because as you're well aware as a council, there's a great deal of investment needs to be done across a diverse part of the community and diverse departments. Kind of how we do it, there's a number of elements that come into play when we're choosing capital projects in terms of when to do them, what's right, what makes sense across all those different divisions and operations. Obviously, health and safety is paramount. funding sources, what's available to spend, what are our master planning studies telling us about what we need to have in terms of park master planning, water master planning, sewer master planning, roads and streets. They're really kind of endless in terms of what we have available there. What level and quality of service we want to provide. Do we want to invest heavily in parks and roads to make those services available and to a high degree of quality? What's our existing infrastructure needs? How do we replace that? What are the equipment needs? Are they unique pieces of equipment? Are they reoccurring? We want to make sure of a positive life cycle for all the equipment in our operating buildings. Again, so through efficiency and maintenance, we maintain those areas. Some projects have complexity on top of complexity in terms of water main and street resurfacing. We try to coordinate those projects to ensure that we're not redoing a street and then turn up for a water main later on, a couple years on the road. And of course, federal and state mandates also dictate a lot of what's going on. So as you can see, this is an exhaustive list, but it does give you a sense of what staff go through in terms of reviewing the information to make sure that we're addressing all elements of planning to come up with a final balanced and a well prioritized capital plan for the current year and the out years 5-year budget. These next few slides are just kind of educational, and I think they have some good meaning just to go over again. In terms of where does the money come from, where is it accounted for in the budget, and then what is it used for? General fund funds a lot of capital across the town. You can see the revenue sources there: sales tax, income tax, property tax, utilities, and so forth. Those are the major revenue sources. The town in general fund has about 100 different sources written, but those are the major ones. That goes to the general fund. General fund obviously supports a great deal of operational needs, but it also funds a great deal of capital. As part of the budget process, we break that capital out into meaningful areas. The CIP fund 325, that's a fund where we do a lot of park improvements and facility improvements. The fire station has its own fund because it's a significant project that we want to make sure we dedicate funds towards. The roadway, a number of years ago, we set that fund up again to dedicate resources for roadway projects from general fund. And then vehicle and equipment reserve, again, a fund we set aside money annually to support all the capital need for vehicle and equipment. And we'll go into more detail shortly. There are other funds besides general fund that support capital, as the council is well aware. State motor fuel tax, that's restrictive in nature. Most of these funds are restricted to what they can be used for. We house that in our state motor fuel tax fund, Fund 213, two is the accountants of us in the world. Road bridges, sidewalks, traffic signals. We get money from HUD for community development loan grant. That's for low-income mod areas. Developer fees, pay for park fund. Park fund's a relatively small fund, but it does support a great deal of small park projects, mostly playgrounds and so forth. We do have some federal and state funding along with local funding for the underpass fund. Again, the underpass is a very significant project for the town, so it has its own separate fund to account for both the revenue and expense of that project. And then ARPA money, which is our federal funds from COVID to help recover from that pandemic. And that goes to a variety of areas, from roads to sewers to technology programs and so forth, even Connect Transit. So a lot going on in those revenue sources and those projects. And then finally, water, sewer, and stormwater. These, of course, are enterprise funds. You're quite familiar with them, as the council knows. That's all user fee and charges supported. Those user fees and charges, as you're well aware. And of course, stormwater also is an enterprise fund that supports a great deal of stormwater management. So all this kind of coalesce into a lot of different funds, a lot of different revenue sources, a lot of different projects. We try to separate the projects into what we call spending types. Transportation is the largest one. Operating assets, water distribution, sewer, parks and facilities, and stormwater are kind of the areas that we kind of house these projects to give you a sense of where they're at in total. In terms of that, obviously the lion's share of it's in transportation, but just let me back up a second. So last year's CIP, that was the current year for last year and the 5-year outlook for the budget we're in now, we plan to spend $174.8 million. And to be quite candid, that was a lot of money I felt back then in terms of we definitely significantly increased our capital commitments in that fiscal year budget. 436 projects. We're doing even more now. The town is fortunate to be in a position where it can dedicate more of its revenue and more of its resources towards these projects, and that's what we're doing in terms of the increase. You can see by the chart there, The transportation, we've gone from 85.4 million, the plan last year for the 5 years. Now ahead to the next 5 year, or this current fiscal year and the 5 years out, $96.7 million of project spending, about $11.3 million increase. That's our operating assets, again, more money, almost $8 million more there. Water distribution, 8.8 million, and you can see down the line. Everything is increased with the exception of stormwater drain, which is a tiny decrease. But in general, this is, and Ms. Reese mentioned this is part of the story where we're able to provide significantly more funding to our capital resource, our capital investment, which is very, very important, as you all know, for the community. Breaking down these different areas, transportation costs, or what's in that. This chart does a good idea of demonstrating that. Street resurfacing, almost $31 million over the current next 5 years. Specific street work itself, 20. So we're at $50 million alone in the next, for this year and the next 5 years in street maintenance and street resurfacing, which is great. Uptown Connector, that's a big project also, $27.3 million of budget right now for the out years. That's coming up. Then you can see down the line there, almost $6 million for bridge and culvert repair, $5 million for sidewalk and ADA ramp construction, pavement preservation. So a lot going on in the transportation realm. That's the most significant piece of our CIP, and you can see in that the most significant piece is all the road work that we're doing. Operating assets. This is kind of our vehicle and reserve funds. Both the general fund has one and also sewer and water. You can see in large part almost $19.4 million of vehicles, and we're not buying Honda Civics. We're buying some pretty significant things. Fire trucks, you can see there, fire trucks, waste trucks, ambulances. It gives you a sense of how much these pieces of equipment, these vehicles cost. Extremely expensive. I didn't put on here, although it's probably a ladder truck for the fire department. It's over $1 million to buy. So pretty healthy price tags for these items, but they're all assets that we need to operate, particularly with police and fire, our waste trucks and so forth. Equipment, the $7.6 million of equipment, that's across the board. Every department has a great deal of equipment needs. The ones that kind of stand out the most are related to PD and fire, with radio and video equipment. That's part of their processes these days. Technology, another big budget item for our equipment stuff is technology, $7.5 million. That's all our networks, our server replacement, our Wi-Fi, our storage. It kind of goes on and on and on. So a lot going on in terms of our operating assets. And you can see the sense what the prices are for some of these things. Water distribution, again, another significant area of spending for the town, which we've ramped up over a number of years. $17.8 million in water main replacement. Again, this is over the next 5-year period, doing a great deal of water main replacement. Again, the infrastructure needs to be replaced and maintained to ensure high quality water. We're definitely doing that. Water relocations, well maintenance. We're doing some new wells this year. So a lot going on with water. That's always been the case for a number of years in terms of the cost of investment for water, and we're just seeing more and more of that. And then sewer, again, we call it sewer collections, water distribution, but it's mostly water and sewer operations. Again, sewer lining, $9 million of sewer lining, $5 million of utility improvements. This is all from a study of some time ago that's actually being updated again. This $9 million is in the process for this 5 years, and we continue to spend more and more money in both those areas, water and sewer. Parks and facility, again, the fire station, of course, was on there last year. It's still on there. We're in the process of getting that project moving forward. Facilities maintenance program, this is where we start talking about roofs and HVACs and building envelope, carpet, everything that you would expect. In fact, of that $4.9 million we have right now, about 1.5 is being dedicated to the CDM, the museum, and all kinds of building, mostly roof replacement and all kinds of building envelope activity. So again, a lot going on. Parks improvements, again, things going on in park improvements. We're doing some skate park replacement. Tennis and pickleball, we're improving those lots. Pools are a big area for capital investment, playgrounds and so forth. So you can see a lot going on in facilities and parks. And this slide's actually, we're talking about just a second. Again, you probably recall a number of years ago, we weren't doing a lot of money towards these areas. the last 4 or 5 years, we've been able to, through revenue and economic development and just essentially the town's, the community's economic, I guess I'm not, just the fact that we're doing so well, we're able to dedicate more and more funds to these areas, and that's very fortunate, because these are some areas that sometimes get a little bit delayed or not done at all, so we're doing well in those areas also. Stormwater, again, this isn't quite as big as the funds that we've kind of covered already, but certainly a necessary resource to manage stormwater. A lot of the money for stormwater goes to some discharge improvement programs, kind of drainage and creek maintenance and so forth, and other capital projects, all related just to managing stormwater, both for detention, for creeks and so forth. So a lot going on there. With that, pretty quickly, I do want to spend a little time just showing you actually the actual interactive tool that we provide, both for staff use, for the council use, and primarily for the residents to see. And we'll talk about a few projects specifically. Let me get to that. So to get to that particular tool, it's online. You go to the Town of Normal website. And we go government down to our open data portal. Okay. It's showing on mine. You guys can't see this? Here we go. Okay, thank you, Lucy. All right, so this is our CIP dashboard, and there's a lot of data here. I'll walk you through some of it. I know this is familiar from last year, but it's a wonderful tool. It shows a lot of information in terms of slicing and dicing data. Right off the bat, you can see that we have 457 projects in total for the current year and the out 5 years, for a total of $209 million here at the bottom. There's a couple of tabs we can look at real quickly. One shows the spending by fiscal year. So down here in the bottom, fiscal year, funding source, and project type. Fiscal year for 24, we have 55.5 million of spending, 65.9 and so forth, 26.4 for 2027, 23.1. So that gives you a sense of what the spending levels are in the 5-year plan. They tend to drop off as we continue. Our planning window starts to get further and further out. We tend to slow down where we're going to put things. So you see more of it in the upfront years, and then that just recurs every 5 years. In terms of funding source, it just breaks down all the funds that are available. The lion's share, obvious roadway fund. You can see underpass fund, the water fund, vehicle and reserve general fund, capital, ARPA. So a lot of funds here that dictate and that manage all of our spending. And then project type, this just is kind of the number of projects. So for transportation, there's 102 projects. For water distribution, there's 82. And you can get this data a lot of different ways. If you want to just see projects for transportation, it automatically converts the dashboard into 102 total projects. On the left side, it shows you kind of a little more narrative on those. It'll show you the value at 96.8 million. And it also will give a graphic here that shows us kind of an overview of the map of the community of Normal. And all the transportation projects are color-coded gray, which I guess is kind of like the asphalt in terms of how we decided that. You can click on the actual graphic here and see what it is. So in that's Savannah Green Road and alley improvement. So there's 2 projects associated with that, basically fiscal year 24 and 25. I know the council's familiar with that project. It's ARPA funded. It's an area of significant need. Nearly over $4 million of spending, or $4.4 million for that project alone. You kind of click off, it's kind of an on-off thing, so we'll click off it here. Back to 102 projects in terms of 96 million. You scroll over here and see, here's West College. And again, one project, and it kind of gives you a little bit of a narrative too on what the project's all about. Again, this is for someone who's interested in seeing that. You can scroll down further in this detail and see who's in charge of the project, which of course is Mr. Otto. And then you see all different colors here. We'll switch over to other as kind of our next biggest area. That's not quite as exciting in terms of colors, but it looks like we've selected yellow, which is good. You can see 122 projects, $39.1 million total spending. Since these projects are kind of designated to a certain operation, they're not necessarily located somewhere in the community other than the actual department. So we can kind of do a little exploration here and see what this is. That's probably Public Works. If you go out, you can scroll in there. Oh, hang on. That's too far. There we go. Okay, so we're living on the edge here in terms of live stuff. So here's Public Works, 20 different, essentially 20 different projects that both ends kind of 20 different possible spending for fleet, $11.4 million of spending. You can scroll down here and see either from here, so I'll just use this, equipment, vehicles, there's 1.275 million for Public Works street vehicles. That's likely probably a number of vehicles, a loader, maybe a waste carrier and so forth. And you can kind of go through and see some of the detail on those by just clicking through here. Again, it's pretty handy. We can click on one where this is probably, that's facilities, okay, also. We'll see what this one is too here. Fire department, again, 10 projects, essentially 10 different type assets for the most part, $3.6 million in terms of activity. So you can see some of the $440,000 police department vehicles. We don't define too much of that in this document, but we have other deeper elements to look at. Those are probably likely ambulance or other vehicles or equipment and so forth. Water, we'll do a couple more here just to give you a sense. So water's all in blue, which obviously makes sense. $30 million of spending in the current year and the out 5 years for the capital plan. 82 different projects, significant projects going on here in water. You scroll out, so you can see where all the water projects are. Most of these are water main projects, and it gives you a sense of where they're occurring in the community. Click on this one here. This is a water main replacement from Manchester from McKinley to McCormick. A big project, $85,000 for the current year, and then almost $1 million for next year in terms of spending. And then just one final one, look at facilities. That's in red. And so 36 projects, $12.3 million of spending. Again, same kind of process. Public Works complex, some capital being spent there. If you want to scroll a little more, I think we probably have in here the, oh, sorry, I'm just getting a little too fast there. Yeah, there's a CDM. There's a circle in the CDM, of course, and there we have a lot of building maintenance going on there, about $1.5 million as mentioned earlier. So a lot going on in terms of equipment, in terms of vehicles, in terms of water and sewer projects, parks projects, transportation. It's all kind of housed in this document in a pretty interactive way. This all ties into the proposed budget that we'll bring to you in late January. In terms of, you can also look on this side and see by fiscal year, by spending plan. So if you really want to know how much we're spending in water on next fiscal year 26, $3.4 million on 14 projects, and you can kind of see where they're all at. So that we feel that's probably pretty useful to folks who want to know when certain projects are coming on board and what they're going to be interacting with in terms of the actual community. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's a lot of projects, as you're well aware, in this 450 plus, 209 million in total. I can address some questions on that, but if we have deeper questions, we would need to default to the directors who are in charge of those parks and recs or facilities or Ryan at the transportation. But that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Great, thanks, Andrew. This is always helpful. I think most of the council members are pretty familiar with this process, and it's proved to be pretty valuable to us all going through. So, questions for Andy?
I've always got a question. So you didn't address it specifically, but it's probably in the transportation section, and that would be, what are our thoughts about alleys?
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to share
Oh,
your opinion about alleys. No, I appreciate the
about the
question.
alleys?
We weren't surprised that alleys would come up. I'm going to invite Mr. Otto forward if that's all right, Mayor and Council. Certainly, Mr. Otto has quite a bit of information in terms of the analysis, not only of our pavement preservation study and our transportation investment moving forward. But we also were fortunate to have had one of our consultants review our current alley situation in Normal, excluding the Savannah Green neighborhood, because we know we just went out for bid with that particular neighborhood, which also has its own alleys. The rest of the community has about 14 alleys. We did an assessment, and we're prepared to talk about that, and then, moving forward, whatever council's choice is on how we want to address alleys, we will incorporate that into the CIP moving forward or in our final budget for 24-25. So, Mr. Otto, you want to give us kind of the quick Reader's Digest version of the alleys?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Reese. We did do an analysis of 14 alleys that are currently gravel surfaced. So we do have paved alleys, but we just looked at 14 of our alleys that are currently gravel surface. The general analysis is, the per alley cost to repair and pave with either asphalt or concrete is about $215,000 a piece for each alley, and that varies depending on the length, but that's just an average for the 14 alleys. And then we have options. We found that both concrete and HMA options are very similar in cost. With the asphalt, you have to dig a little bit further down, so there's more excavation. With the concrete, it's just a little higher in the cost. So they're very similar in cost, and we can tailor, whatever's decided, we can tailor potentially the surface type that's selected to the specific alley.
Right, and thank you for that information. So currently, what happens today when it comes to alley maintenance is the current gravel alleys are maintained by the Public Works Department and filling potholes and the like, and just using basically a gravel type of component for pothole filling and alley preservation as they are currently today, and pretty low cost in terms of maintenance.
That's correct, Ms. Reese. We find that our costs are pretty low. The gravel that we use now compared to the gravel that we used a couple of years ago, we've switched to a white crushed stone, has a much better life than the millings that we had previously used. So we've had good experience with that, and it's quite cost effective compared to paving the alley and maintaining the pavement over the course of its lifetime. Certainly the gravel surface is much cheaper to repair and much cheaper to maintain.
So we have 14 unpaved alleys. We've got some others that are paved. Why were those chosen to be paved at some point in time? I think it's been a while ago.
Yeah, that I apologize, I do not know.
Okay. So we have some inconsistencies, I guess, across our alley.
Provide a little historic on
Okay.
that. I think the last alley that we paved was a section in Cedar Crest, and that was in 2001 or 2002.
Okay. And I think nearby that is another one that some of the residents have been more vocal than others, noting that their neighboring alley got resurfaced recently, I believe. So that particular one, do you know about, it's by Broadview Mansion, do you know roughly, would that be in the $200,000 range as well?
It is about that range, yes.
Okay, all right. I would say that as alleys was probably one of the first issues that was brought to my attention when I got on council 8 years ago by this particular group of neighbors, particularly that are concerned about the alley that I just mentioned. It doesn't really, according to the neighbors, withstand the rigorous use by the municipal vehicles that have to go in there for garbage pickup. And so what they tell me and what they've shown me is that even though I think on a quarterly basis more crushed rock is brought in, it tends to wash away pretty quickly and get disrupted pretty quickly. So I would like for us to consider at least a intentional plan, and maybe it's not all 14. I think that might be a lot to bite off, and then especially in 10 years, they would all come due for resurfacing. So, perhaps stepping in on a 1 to 2 alleys a year as funds permit, and that way they don't all come due at the same time. And, the money that we've been pouring into rock over and over and over, you set that aside and a little bit more for the upkeep and the maintenance that would have to happen in 10 years or so for repaving. I'd like us to do that. I mean, we seem to be in a very comfortable position, like really never before. And so now would be the time to take on some of these projects that heretofore, with tighter capital budget constraints, really never made the cut. So we have an opportunity for it to make the cut.
I would question the number, looking at the alley map earlier. Some of those alleys are 2 to 3 blocks long, some are just 5 houses long or 3 houses long. It'd be interesting if we take a look at this, what our total cost is, and how do we prioritize what happens first, what happens, and all that. And one thing, I'm not gonna be very popular for saying this, but, alleys tend to be single purpose, single use. And unfortunately, a lot of that is because that's how the property was designed and there's access to the garage. But maybe looking at some 50-50 program to do that kind of work too. So I think there's a lot of looking we've got to do on this before we forward with any kind of yes or no, shall we move forward on that? I'd like to get a little more financial information in that. I know when we did that last alley in 2001, 2002, and it was right after that we quit doing it, there was a prioritization schedule based on number of people served and functionality of the existing alley, and I think that'd be an appropriate thing to look at too as part of that if we're going to look at it.
Sure, we can absolutely look at that. I did want to jump in. I think we do have a pretty solid cost estimate overall for all 14 alleys. Combined, we anticipate that would be about $3 million to surface all 14 alleys. And then, of course, the ongoing maintenance we'd have to build into our pavement preservation approach long-term, but there's certainly numbers and analysis we can do, but understand what you're asking for, and you as well, Ms. Lorenz. So we can put some more, I guess, some more detail to all this and have a more comprehensive conversation if council would like.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess I'll start with the last. I'm more than interested in entertaining a conversation about this. And following up on your comments, Mayor, about some more financial information, and certainly the $3 million is helpful for us, but the ongoing care and maintenance versus the current program. And so I'm sure there's going to be a substantial increase in cost of paving and then maintaining pavement, then repaving versus gravel. But, it would behoove us up here taking those votes to have at least some basic level of comparison so that we can understand the differentials on into the future for us. Not that that's a stopping block, but at least that we can make those informed decisions that way. Backing up, I just want to say another outstanding job on the CIP. And to look where we were, I remember being up here a number of years ago when we were approaching $100 million over 5 years. And I made the comment of what percentage that we were going to be spending tens of millions of dollars on roadway. And I was redirected by the city manager that was over 5 years and we should only count 1 year into the future. But here we are not too many years later talking about doubling the amount of investment in capital assets in our community. That's a wow. Glad that we're doing that well as a community. And that nearly, it's got to be 45 to 50, somewhere 46, 47% of that in transportation-related assets, I think is obviously indicating to the public where the priorities are and what we're attempting to do. So kudos there. Also, you spent a lot of time on the online open data portal and the transparency. I just wanted to share out publicly that this is so good and so much ahead. I was recently at the National League of Cities and sitting in a session and talking with one of the panelists, counterpart at our level at another city, way far north and west in Alaska. And recently we're interacting with them, and they are taking a really hard look at what we're doing and very interested and very excited in using our tool as a model. And one of the feedback from Alaska was, your tool is so smart it tracks when people talk about it online. I said it's not quite that good, but so just for our citizens and kind of general public awareness that this tool is so good and transparent, that other communities are using it as a model, and that's a compliment. Again, I did this last year, but I'll do it again this year. Compliment all the staff and the team that were part of Ms. Gataraju and her department leading that, but all the department heads, and how cool it is for us to be able to zoom down. I'm sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, demonstrating to people from other communities, zooming down in on projects and tapping them and just watching their eyes and minds go, you're doing what with your financial data? So kudos again.
Further on this? Please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. That concludes our new business. We have no public commenters post business. Before a motion for adjournment, concerns or comments, Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, Mayor, just want to say, as our last regularly scheduled meeting of the year, happy holidays to everybody on staff and the community, whether you're celebrating already or yet to come. And hope everybody has the opportunity to spend time with family or friends or those that you love and care about, and enjoy a little bit of holiday time. Thanks, Mayor. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Further concerns or comments? Motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion for dismissal. Approval of dismissal.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Byers?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned.
I'm sorry, I can't. No, it's on.